it was very difficult to just care for myself, care for my baby. That led me to a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress, and eventually postpartum depression, um, which there were a lot of signs, and a lot of people did not recognize it.
Welcome to another episode of the Preparing for Pregnancy After Loss podcast. This is your host, Natalie Facey, and today I have the pleasure of sitting with Neha Pandya, Dr. Neha Pandya. She is the founder of the Recovery Method, and it's a company advocating for bettering postpartum care in the United States, and more specifically, having an interdisciplinary approach to postpartum care. Dr. Pandya has developed a platform that will showcase a database of postpartum providers, a library of postpartum educational resources, and a learning page dedicated to providers to help enhance their skill set. Welcome, Neha.
Having me, Natalie.
Yeah. So I know that one of the things that we just touched on earlier is your intention for our time together for this episode. And I'd love for you to share that again so that those who listen to our conversation today are brought into that intention with us.
My intention going into this is to help as many women that are navigating into the postpartum space as possible. But if I can just help that one person, even by improving their postpartum journey by 5%, I will consider the recovery method to be a success. It's not easy to be on the other side of pregnancy once the baby is here, or if your baby is not on Earth side, it is still very difficult for you to navigate the challenges that come with your health and your body and your mind. Um, I know firsthand experience, and I have had several interviews with the same type of experience. And as I started doing more and more research, I recognized this huge gap that needs to be filled. And my intention is to whoever is listening, if we can just join hands, raise our voices, because a bigger voice will make a bigger change. And that's what we want is to create something for moms that is easily accessible to just help them navigate those few challenges that we can
Mhm,
and improve their well-being long term.
mhm, Thank you for that. Thank you for that. And I'm going to restate the intention that I named earlier, which is that for most of the people who I work with, their focus is becoming pregnant because there might be some challenges around fertility, or if they do become pregnant because there has been some form of trauma around pregnancy or childbirth, it's trying to stay present in the pregnancy or trying to ensure that they don't have another loss. So much of the energy and the focus just happens around that pregnancy period. And there's very little attention to the fact that their care needs to continue after they give birth. Like they need to be surrounded by so much care. And so I'm really appreciating the work that you do because it like pulls away the curtain so that we can see, oh, this whole other world also requires attention and focus and support. So thank you again for saying yes to joining me today.
Of course, I'm happy to be here.
So we will go into the recovery method and what you do in more detail, but I'd love for you to perhaps start with like, what's the journey that even brought you to starting the recovery method?
Well, I'm going to say, I think it's been about 4 years now, which I feel like is a lifetime ago. But the recovery method really started as an intention. And it happened after I gave birth 4 years ago to my son. And as a provider, a little bit about my background, I'm a physical therapist, and I have worked in, I have a decade of experience, but after working through the hospital systems, I've never recognized the huge gap that exists when it comes to seeing patients in the women's and children's hospital, right?
Mm,
seeing postpartum moms. There were never patients that came through. And it took me being on that side in the maternity ward to recognize the gap that exists.
mhm,
Since then, I've devoted a lot of my time and energy into really recognizing why this gap exists. So I've, done a lot of research for the last 4 years, really trying to figure out why this gap exists, how we've overlooked an entire population, and what is it that we're doing differently compared to other countries? Um, we have come across so many statistics since then to really recognize how desperately we need to have something in place for women in order for them to have a better outcome on the postpartum side. And I had a very traumatic birth experience my first time around. So that passion really rises from that experience as to I don't want anyone to ever feel like I did in those moments where you're feeling helpless and vulnerable and not knowing who to turn to or how to turn to. And being as strong of a person as I was in that moment, being, split apart and having to also take care of this beautiful baby, but not knowing how to is something that really fed into my mental health and that really shook me physically. So that's how the recovery method was born.
mhm,
And through my research, what I've recognized is, I don't know if in my lifetime we'll be able to change the policies and the reform, but there are so many amazing, dedicated platforms working towards that. My goal is to create the platform that will help women in the moment where they can turn to a platform, go onto the platform at their leisure, their convenience, and find educational resources and access to care providers right underneath their fingertips,
mhm,
um, versus having to scroll and scroll and scroll and then go off on a tangent and, read something that is nowhere near what they had started to, ask.
mhm,
Um, but that's kind of what the recovery method has been about. And I believe that this will be one of those things that moms can use at their leisure and convenience and be like, you know what, this is a good tool to help me, even if it is one question that they come up with, right?
mhm.
Um, and that's how my story started.
For that. Are you open to sharing more about your, maybe it's your pregnancy journey or the childbirth journey? And I know that pregnancy number one, or that experience was very different from pregnancy number two, with just all of the information that you were gathering. So I'd love to hear about that first pregnancy and childbirth experience for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Pregnancy. Both of my pregnancies, I loved. I loved every bit of it. I loved just the feeling of I felt so empowered and just so super like it was something amazing, that spiritual connection. Um, it was the birth experience the first time where it wasn't part of my plan. I had to have an emergency C-section, and that was very traumatic for me because again, I was not prepared. It was my first surgery in my entire life, and I was in labor for about 36 hours. And during the during this surgery, I felt so much pain in my shoulder from, just the carbon dioxide that they kind of put into your body. I started throwing up. It was just my body was in shock um, after separating me from my baby. And it was in so much shock that my blood pressure completely dropped and I was unconscious.
Oh,
And I don't know how long it was, but my husband tells it a lot differently than I do. He's a lot more dramatic about it, but Um, he was saying that I was out for a long time. The nurses were all trying to wake me up so that I can do skin to skin and feed. In my head, I was like, this is it. Like I don't want to go anywhere. I want to be there for my baby. So I kept trying to wake up and grunting myself to wake up, but I couldn't. My husband was like, just open your eyes. I can hear him somewhere in the background. And I think an older midwife was like, just put the baby on her. And I heard that, and they put the baby on me. I felt the weight of him. And my husband was just like, just open one eye, just try to open one eye. And I heard him stop crying. I opened my eyes and I saw his face, and that was it. My blood pressure shot right back up. All of my vitals went back up. Everything was stabilized. And I, to this day, cannot thank that midwife enough for doing that, for knowing just, how this works, how this pregnancy and postpartum and how a mom is connected to her child. Like just knowing that little tidbit of information really, she came through, right? I was very, very, very grateful for that. That was my first experience, and after that, it was COVID time. I was in the hospital for so long. Um, Getting home was a challenge. I couldn't walk, I couldn't move. I didn't know how to. Nobody came and taught me how to. And even my medical training just kind of went out the door because I'm a mom now and my mental, like, I was in a vulnerable state, right? So I couldn't think clearly. And it was very difficult to just care for myself, care for my baby. That led me to a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress, and eventually postpartum depression, um, which there were a lot of signs and a lot of people did not recognize it. But luckily, my mother-in-law did, and she said that I need to go see somebody. And I found care, which was difficult. It took a while to find a place to go. Just Google's the only place you could really find those types of resources. My OB-GYN didn't have any resources to provide me. And even then, it took me about 2 weeks to get in. And the first appointment, her name was Jen. I sat there and I just cried for an hour. Said nothing, just couldn't talk, couldn't move. Like I couldn't get a few words out. I just cried and she just let me. She gave me a box of tissues and said, that's okay. You're going through something. You have depression and that's okay. We're going to figure this out. And it took about 10 weeks of counseling and we talked through a lot of the emotions and everything pretty much about my fears, my anxiety about what I'm anticipating. A lot of it were just thoughts in my head that were not real. And she would make me do a training exercise where I would write my thoughts and then also write the facts. So it's like you have to put it down on paper to really see what is reality. And that's what's going to help clear your mind. And that that I took with me even into my second pregnancy and my second postpartum. But my second postpartum, I was much better prepared. I knew um, I advocated for myself. I knew how to. I didn't want to stay in the hospital long. I told my OB-GYN, I was like, I know we're going to do this cesarean, but 2 days tops and I'm out. Whether you like it or not, I'm out. I need to go home. I need to be in my own space. And that's what I did. I prepared myself a happy cart, which was like my breastfeeding cart. And I put a lot of the food that I like in there, along with my pump supplies. I put, some lists of movies and books and things I wanted to do. Even just like um, positive messages, right? Like where it's like, you'll get through this. Pictures of my son and I put those in there. Just everything, an album. to keep myself, just looking through stuff. And it's like, I will get back to this travel. I will get back to my life. I know I will. But eventually, when we got closer and closer to going back to work, though, that's when the anxiety started again. Childcare is its own topic that I'm not even going to get into, but I learned to navigate it. I used my training and my tools that I had gotten the first time, and I came out of it with a much clearer head. But that doesn't mean that I don't have bouts of it now, right? I know before we started this, I was telling you I woke up at 3 o'clock today, couldn't go back to sleep. And it's just intrusive thoughts, intrusive dreams that seem very realistic, but they're not. And those are more fears of now that my baby is out here and he's growing up and detaching himself from me, the fear of what this world could possibly impose on him. And that's what keeps me up at night. That's what really feeds into my fear. Even with my daughter, the things that are going on in the world where I don't know what tomorrow is going to look like for her. And that keeps me up. But the other thing that keeps me up are the moms that I don't know exist, but they are also up as well. And in that mental health state with the vulnerability, not knowing where to look. And that's why I'm so passionate about creating this platform for them because, again, I remember what it was like to be in their seat and it was not pleasant.
Mm.
So that's what led me here.
That's such a powerful story. Yeah, thanks for that. Mm. I'm also remembering the first time we connected, you shared about the support that your mother-in-law offered. So I'd love to touch on that if you'd like to as well.
Absolutely. I have always been close to my mother-in-law. I'm close to my mom, but for some reason, I knew who I needed to surround myself with. My postpartum depression the first time was so bad, I couldn't be left alone. So she stayed with me. She stayed with me every single day. She would come on Monday morning when before my husband left for work, and she would stay till Friday night. And then I was to my husband's to watch after that. But she was there every hour. She would make sure I was eating. She would make sure that anything that she could do to help really ease my tension, she did.
Mhm.
She gave me massages to help with my swelling. She gave me positive enforcement, positive affirmations every day, saying, "Wow, Bidda, you're strong. You're you're doing so well. Like he's thriving, she's thriving." And those positive affirmations really made me feel proud. And I'm going to be forever grateful to her because she's the one who really came through for me. And I love my mom. My mom helped me a lot too. But at the end of the day, you build your village the way you want. And the people that you surround yourself with does not necessarily have to be the closest people to you, but the people that you can connect with at that moment are the people that you want to have in your village. So it's not something that's out of the norm for you to feel like this is a person that I want here and near me while I'm going through this. Um, and that's what I want moms to take away is when you build your village, you build it to your liking. You build it to seeing how the other person is acting, is feeding off of how are you feeling, and are they able to give you what you need in those times? That's the person that you want there. It doesn't matter how close you are or how near and dear you are, it does not matter. It's in that moment, who do you need the most?
Mhm.
And that's the person you look to.
Yeah. Mm. Mm. Thank you. So you touched on a bit of what happens after childbirth, like in that postpartum period. I know you mentioned the swelling of the legs. You just touched on, the intrusive thoughts and the fears. There's so much that people don't know about that other side of pregnancy. So I'd love for you to share some of those things that are overlooked, whether it's like statistics or stories that you've heard from some of the folks that you've come into contact with and worked with, but just like, pulling away that curtain so that we see like what's there on the other side of pregnancy that people don't usually talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. Along with obviously physical changes, whether you have a vaginal or a cesarean birth, there are a lot of physical changes that happen to your body. Your body, the wound that stays inside you, is the size of a dinner plate. Like it is huge. And it is so unfair that society asks us to just up and move and up and recover without putting those, you know, without putting anything in place for us to really follow, like a guideline. Um, there's a lot of reports, a lot of research now more than ever about women who have had prolapse or pelvic floor issues, or, the statistics that keep coming out every year about women suffering from postpartum depression, or years down the line when they start having incontinence or even low, something as simple as low back pain. Obesity is another thing, right? That is much higher in women than men, especially postpartum, because our hormones, they don't regulate for a very long time. But even just seeking some help early on can help you navigate those challenges that are going to come up later in life. So it's very important to understand that having one disciplinary uh, appointment with your OB-GYN as a follow-up is not enough. When you've gotten dozens of appointments during pregnancy, but now you're kind of stuck with one appointment at like 4 weeks or 6 weeks, when you're not even fully recovered until 2 years down the road, right? You're healing. You're going through every stage as your newborn is going through.
Mm,
Postpartum is not a period. Postpartum is the rest of your life.
mm,
You are postpartum. Your body is going to continue to feed off of the changes that have happened. Your body is going to continue to need your self-care. You cannot neglect it because someone else has neglected it. I
yeah.
think as a society, we put a lot of our eggs in one basket when it comes to listening to every little thing that a healthcare provider says. Um, a few initials behind someone's name does not mean that they know everything. I'm not saying don't listen to them. Obviously, we want to make sure you're getting good medical practice, but there needs to be more. We are burdening our medical providers when we have an entire population upon their shoulders. Our OB-GYNs are burdened by having to really listen to all of these statistics that, oh, you missed this, oh, you missed this, but it's sometimes it's not their fault. They are also seeing a whole population by themselves, and that's why having an interdisciplinary approach is the best way. Look
Mm,
at France. France is doing a great job. UK just adopted their guidelines in 2017. They're thriving. I've talked to people that live in France, providers that live in UK, and I wanted to understand what they're doing differently that we're not doing. And they're thriving. They have more ability to seek the care that they need. They want to have kids. Their bodies are returning to what they want. Obviously, our bodies never recover completely, but we are able to create a new normal. But
mm,
how do we create a new normal? By getting the help that we need. Whether that's physical, mental, all of those components work together. The physical changes, the hormonal imbalances, those all feed into your mental health. The mental health then feeds into your physical health by increasing cortisol and and so many other avenues, and you start feeling depressed where you don't feel like moving and you get fatigued and you become sedentary and then you are not functional, and all of those key things can really impact the rest of your life, right? And so we want to make sure that on our platform you get the ability to find all of these resources regarding whether it's a provider or just information, right? We want to make sure that women are empowered and educated that these conditions exist. You're not alone. Everybody's going through it, but understand what you're going through. The only way for you to help or seek help is for you to understand that this exists.
Mhm.
Otherwise, you're not going to be able to understand what is happening, right? Um, I know that one of the things that um, comes with time is our hormones change again, right? Time, we have puberty, right, which is a huge thing in the United States about, oh, a kid is going through puberty and they're going to have all of these hormone changes, and it's like the teen mentality, the way that they act, the way that they present themselves, and we have all of these mental health guidelines in place now to recognize those signs, right? When we're going through those mental health issues at that stage of life. There is another time where a female goes through even worse hormonal changes, and that's postpartum. But as a society, we don't recognize those.
Mhm.
And as a society, we need to understand that that period of time also needs to have some validation and have some spotlight on it because um, otherwise, what are we doing? How are we helping these people? Right?
Mhm. Wow. Wow. Can you share more about what the guidelines or practices look like in France and England, so other areas outside of the US that are doing a much better job at care for the family?
They have more of an interdisciplinary approach where they have medical providers. They do use more midwives in the consults. They have a specific visit that is established for women for after they go home from the hospital, for example. We are missing that as a country. You go home and you don't see a provider for 6 weeks. They also get 10 essential visits with a pelvic health provider. In fact, there was an article posted actually a few years ago now of a woman from the US who was living in France and gave birth in France, and how the difference of their maternal health care looks from the United States. France's government, they have put these actions into place only for one reason, and that's the betterment of their population, right? You want to have a good, healthy population with live births and such, and increase your country's economy and population and all of that, right? But you can't do so without putting those specific things in place, regulations in place that will help the women who are increasing your population or helping your economy. They also have much longer maternity leave than we do. In fact, most women don't go back to work for up to a year just because of, they have the ability to do so, right? Their work mentality itself is just a lot different than ours. But that's a whole nother can of worms we don't want to open right now. But either way, it's not just healthcare, but it's so many different aspects that they differ from us. But one thing I can say is having an interdisciplinary care where you have multiple providers being a part of a woman's journey and giving her more face-to-face time and answering her questions will really help her and validate her to go on and have a second child, right? Or the third or the fourth or the fifth. So you can't have one without the other. You have to have more enforcements in place before you expect a woman to just have a baby.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh. Thank you for just bringing lights to all of this. I want to call out some of the statistics that you shared on your website and on your social media. I love just like seeing all the information that you're sharing. So one is that 60% of women report experiencing at least one symptom of pelvic floor dysfunction within the first year of postpartum.
Yes. So that statistic, that's from several different articles,
Mm-hmm.
but there's more light being shined on this because there's a lot of women that aren't even accounted for in this specific
Mm-hmm.
statistic.
Mm-hmm.
60% is still a lot, but think about all those other women that were missing that weren't even part of this statistic. There's a lot more than just pelvic floor at play here. 60% report just one symptom, but more than half of those have more than one symptom. So pelvic
Wow.
floor itself is such a huge component of our anatomy. It is in charge of pretty much our entire body. It is our core, it is our stabilizer. And if you don't have a good stabilizer, it can affect not just like, your urinary tract or your waist tract, but it could affect more organs than we know. In addition to that, our pelvic floor is directly connected to our hormones too, right? And that's something that just anatomically we all know, and that's in men and women. And having a symptom of the pelvic floor can really dysregulate you on so many other avenues hormonally that it can have a larger effect,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm. Wow. All right. 15% of women suffer from postpartum depression within the first year after delivery.
Again, this statistic is still very minimal, and there's so many women that are not accounted for that weren't even part of half of these studies, or
Mhm.
unfortunately, they also aren't answering the depression scale postpartum accurately. First of all, the depression scale is handed out by a pediatrician, your child's pediatrician, not even a healthcare provider that you are seeing. So recognizing signs of postpartum depression can be very difficult, but there is a way to proactively improve this statistic, and that is by, again, having an interdisciplinary approach, bridging that gap between care from when the woman gets discharged from the hospital to home with that 6 week medical provider visit. So have a visit with the medical provider in between, whether it's virtually or telehealth or in person or concierge, whatever it is. But somebody needs to be going to up to this mom and seeing her in order to help her answer any questions that she may have,
Mhm.
recognize early signs of postpartum depression, recognize signs of even any type of dysregulation physically or emotionally that could be happening in those crucial few weeks
Mhm.
that she's navigating her motherhood. And I think that this statistic can be minimized, but I guarantee you this is, again, a
Mhm.
very, very minimal statistic
Mhm.
compared to what's happening at a larger scale.
Wow. And this is really bringing home something that you touched on earlier, which is like creating the village that you need around you. And
Yes.
most people don't know the village that they'll need around them. They don't know that all of these things could potentially come up. So they will need all of these like providers and experts and people they feel connected to surround them with so much care.
Yeah, they don't. And I can talk from experience. I spent a lot of my pregnancy reading about pregnancy and what to do with the baby.
Mhm.
Nothing about myself because there isn't much light on it. It's not like I'm going to my OB/GYN's office. She's asking me how I'm feeling, how's baby feeling, doing all the checkups, but there's never a time where she was like, "Hey, you should get ready for postpartum by doing XYZ." And I think that that's what we need. We need somebody to be like, plan it out. Let's plan this and how this is happening. We plan every aspect of our lives, right? Why don't we plan this? Because no one pointed it out. No one told us how.
Mhm.
And as every single mom is just figuring it out as she goes.
Mhm. Mm. All right, I'd love for us to know, expand into your vision of the recovery method. Because obviously you went through your journey. You're like, hold on. Why are we missing so much?
And I don't even know where to begin and where to stop. I feel like I want to house so many things under the umbrella of the recovery method. But I will say that my vision of the recovery method is very simple. It's empowering women. We want to house the largest database that we can of interdisciplinary providers, all under the TRM name, and really give access to moms to find these providers just at the tip of their fingertips.
Mhm.
They, I want them to leave the hospital knowing that they can go onto the Recovery Method website that same day and be able to find care or handouts or something as simple as how to draw a sitz bath to, am I having like a blood clot, to answering those questions in one place rather than having to go through Google and reading a million articles from not just providers, but also blog posts and content creators and such. And we want some of this information to be validated by healthcare providers because at the end of the day, safety is very important for this population. We already know that postpartum women are one of the most vulnerable state of mind due to hormone changes, but it's also a time where you're just like absorbing every and anything that comes through, right? Whether it's how to take care of your baby or what to try to help you get back to your postpartum body, all of those things. And I feel like it's everybody's recovery journey is different and they need to take it into their own hands and be able to find their own method of care.
Mhm.
um, the work that we're going to be doing for practitioners as well that are part of our database is we want to give them an opportunity to build a village, right? Postpartum care providers, there's so many, and I love that. There's so many different versions of one specific discipline, and they're doing some amazing things that are out of their scope of practice. They're visionaries on how to really approach a mom as a whole and providing holistic care. Like if somebody ever asked me who to ask, I would say go to a perinatal provider. They know how to envision a person like whole. They look at the entire person and their well-being, rather than just what's hurting you, right? Um, I think that for them, we want to really start building out like regions and really connect them to each other and how they can use each other as resources, right? The best way for them to work together is to be a village. And moms can build their village of practitioners through our database. But practitioners also need to build their own village, right? And so we're going to be doing Build Your Village events in different cities. That is our goal, is to have interdisciplinary networking events, connect them with brands and small business owners who are doing some wonderful things within their own community so that they can teach each other. In addition to that, we also want to create regions within those cities and do block by block because a village can't be built without a block by block, right? So doing events block by block, just networking and meeting some out of the norm visionaries that are doing some awesome things for their communities of women. And that's the vision for the recovery method, in addition to, just our mission to help standardize postpartum care guidelines. That's going to be my ultimate goal, hopefully.
Mhm. Can you name what some of the practitioners are who will be on the platform, like the types of practitioners and the work that they offer, so people have a sense of what they can experience?
Absolutely. We're going to house midwives, nurses, lactation consultants, PT, OT, postpartum doulas, nutritionists, dietitians, functional doctors, acupuncturists, herbalists. Anything and everybody that works in postpartum space. We want to give them a platform to shine and show off their skills. We want them to be found. We want women to know that they exist. Um, and we're very excited to have these providers on our platform, and they're the ones who are leading our build out and really providing us some amazing feedback and support of what they envision this to be. Because at the end of the day, this is a resource for their patients, and their passion really shines through how we're building the recovery method.
Fun. All right. So how might we support your work?
You can support us by one, following us on social media platforms and following our work. Please reshare anything that resonates with you. We really ask of you to, push out our mission, really get us known in the communities. If you have providers that you're like, these are some tremendous people you need to have on your platform, send them our way. Every provider thus far, we scope out, we make sure that they are, again, leaders and visionaries of their community. Their passion shines through. We want them to be the ones that are providing the best care possible to this population. So we do a really good job of scoping them out. We can definitely learn more from each other. So provide any feedback, any opportunities for us to learn as well to understand what it is that moms need. And if anyone's ever wanting to collaborate, please let me know. More than happy to share any information or any interviews or speaking opportunities. I would love to come out and just get this mission out there.
The next question that's coming to mind is the vision that you're holding for the ideal postpartum care experience, or maybe it's like the birthing experience. I don't want to call it a thing because it's like this whole being thing, right? Not just like this one period.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, for someone who is looking to expand their family, looking to have a child and go through the childbirth experience, what's your vision of what their care should look like?
They have somebody from start to finish where they make a connection with the provider. They understand what that provider provides to them, right? Whether it is something physical or emotional, they have multiple providers, not just one person that they look through. They have a doula, they have a PT, OT, they have a fitness coach, they have a mental health counselor, and they turn to them in those times of need to help support them from start to finish, from those uh, obstacles that come their way when they are conceiving to, the postpartum blues. Every opportunity for them to make that connection. And even years down the road, when they're experienced in their postpartum, years down the road, they can still call upon those people, and those people will be there for them, right? Building a village does not necessarily have to be just those few weeks or few months or that first year. That village is with you for the rest of your life.
And I'm wondering if there's anything else you'd like to share, because I can sense that we're coming to the end, and I want to make sure, like, if I didn't remember to ask you something, like, what is it that you'd like to share?
I just believe that there's so many amazing providers out there. And I know there's such a big stigma upon conversation of certain topics, whether that stigma exists due to cultural differences or beliefs. I believe that all of us go through childbirth the same way. We grow babies in the same uterus, right? We have different journeys, but the goal is still pretty much the same. We want to be a good person. We want to be a good mom. We want to be ourselves. We want to come out stronger. Um, Again, it's very difficult for us to talk about what we're feeling or what we've gone through. But when you're ready, share your stories because that's how we feed off of each other. We empower each other. If we don't support each other, who will? There is no knight in shining armor that's going to come and rescue us. It's an analogy we talked about earlier. Postpartum is a portal that you went through. And unfortunately, no matter how much you try to escape that portal, you're not going to get out. But you could stand at the entrance of the portal and lend a hand to the person coming through and tell them it's going to be okay. And I believe that if we all did that, we will save ourselves.
Feel that. Thank you for that. All right. So I'd love to share ways that people can learn more about your work and be in touch with you. So the website is www.therecoverymethodinfo.com. On Instagram, it's the_recovery_method. And your email is Neha, Naha, at therecoverymethodinfo.com. And we'll have all of these in the show notes so people don't have to try to remember.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for joining us and for doing the work that you're doing. Just feel really, really touched by all the ways that people go through some experience that is, painful, difficult, and how that gets to be transformed into something else that can help others. And so just really, really touched by that and thanking you for showing up in that way.
I appreciate that. And thank you for sharing your platform with us. I hope that whoever is listening to this feels empowered and feels that connection with us and hopefully let's go. Let's roll up our sleeves. Let's get to work. We need to do this for the next generation of women.
Mhm,
Really do.
mhm, mhm. Thank you. I'm remembering something on your Instagram, a reel with your daughter, like playing with her doll and feeding it from the bottle and pushing it around and just like, yeah, the dream that you're having that she doesn't have less rights than we have right now, right? There are more rights than she has. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that raising the next generation of women, the next generation of moms, it's a difficult task for us. Our moms went through the similar experiences, and we are here now navigating these challenges still. And we just want to figure out a better way for them to have lesser challenges. We don't want them to have less rights. We want them to have less challenges. And the only thing we can do is work and figure out how we can do this. My daughter is my soul. She is the reason I'm doing what I'm doing. I don't ever want to see her in that position. I'm gonna be there for her in every way possible. But again, you build your own village, right? Um, and I hope that every mother listening to this that has a daughter or a niece, or every parent, every dad that's listening to this that has a daughter or has a niece or a granddaughter, they can all understand the importance of creating something for the next generation because our time's here, our time is present, but they're the ones who are going to have to navigate through way more challenges. And let's not be a part of that.
Mm,
Let's find solutions, not problems for them.
Such a beautiful way to end. Thank you so much, Neha.
You're
Um,
welcome.
Yeah, so this has been another episode of the Preparing for Pregnancy After Loss podcast, where we just sat with Dr. Neha Pandya. So grateful for all that you've shared. If folks want to reach me, my website is nataliefacey.com. I can be found on Instagram at The Birth Warriors, and my email is hello@nataliefacey.com. And again, all of those will be in the show notes, including Neha's information as well.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
Thank you all for joining us, and we will see you in the next episode.